Hello, my name is Kelly from Kelly's Tutoring, and in today's video we're going to look at action versus decision. Now, for many people, they believe that in order to achieve success, we must take actions. We've all heard of the saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. And the message is clear, isn't it? What is the message? The message is that as much as 1,000-mile journey seems difficult, seems almost unattainable, daunting, that we must consider what we can do now. And so we have to take small action, and small consistent actions can lead to the success that we want. So rather than being overwhelmed by the big picture, we break it down. However, I'd like to propose that we consider that even more important than our actions, our physical actions, are the actions of our minds. And by that I mean decision. Now, we often think of decision making as being a passive process, and that it actually doesn't mean anything until we take actions. But I would argue that decision making is in fact an action, and is perhaps the most powerful and the most crucial part of any process. Now, you might be considering, well, what does that have to do with learning? Well, let's take the 11 plus for example. The 11 plus is an exam that most parents want their child to sit in order to open up greater opportunities for them in terms of their education. Now, because of their age, children might not be able to comprehend, what is being asked of them. They might not be able to fully understand, well, actually, this is going to, help later on in life. So what tends to happen is a lot of conflict, a lot of strife, and a lot of tears, because parents try to convince, try to bribe, try to coerce their children into doing something that they have not decided to do. And as a parent, your decision, is final, but nobody likes to have somebody else's will forced upon them. Even GCSE, A-levels, choosing to study at college, sixth form, university, parents all want to make that decision for their child. But fundamentally, you can't. Even when they are under the age of 18, you can't make that decision for them. Well, why? Well, you could tell them what to do, but is it going to be fruitful? Is it going to serve you? Is it going to serve them? And the answer is no. And many parents don't understand or start to wonder, well, why isn't my child succeeding? Yes, my child is bright. They are very respectful, but they're not achieving the right grades. They're not performing. They seem reluctant. They're doing the work, but it's not to their potential. Why is that? And that is because, yes, they are taking action. They might be doing the work. They might be, putting in the reading time. They might be doing as you say, but they haven't taken action of their mind. They haven't decided to do it. So what we're going to look at is how can we encourage decision making in our children and nurturing them the ability to make decisions relating to their education. So the first thing to do is to discuss with them what they want. What are their views? Then once you've done that, you can then express what you want and why, so that they understand where you're coming from. Now, if for example, you want them to prepare for the 11 plus, and you know that it requires a lot of reading, particularly passages and texts from the 19th century classics, how are you going to get them to do that? Especially if you have a child who perhaps is a reluctant reader. They're bright, they're able to do well at school in their comprehension, but it's not going to be enough to get them to the next level. So what do you do then? Well, you want to nurture in them their ability to make decisions. How? Well, first of all, ask them to write down all of the reasons why they are reluctant to read. What is it that they dislike about reading? And they might come up with answers like, it's boring, it's too difficult, I just don't like it. Those are the three quite common reasons. Boring, too difficult, I just don't like it. Or another one is, I've done work already at school, or I've done what you've asked, I don't want to do any more. Or they might select books that are clearly not going to help them to develop in their academic careers. It's not stretching them. They might find it fun and enjoyable, but you know that it is not at their level even. So what do you do then? So you get them to, as I say, write down all of their issues. And you could do it in a flow diagram. So you have the problem and then you break down like why. So they might say, reading is boring. Well, why is reading boring? Because the words are too difficult. Because the writer spends too much time on the description and so it's really slow paced. Because I already have done work and I don't find it enjoyable. And then ask them to come up with solutions then. What can they decide to do to help mitigate some of those issues that they have with reading? And it's important that you give your child time to consider that. And if they're really stuck, then rather than just telling them what to do, write down some of the solutions that you might come up with. So, for example, if they say that reading is boring, they don't like reading because it's boring, and one of the issues is that the words are too difficult, maybe they could scan the passages for some of the challenging words and look them up before they begin reading in depth. You as a parent could scan passages and texts and pick up some of the big words and ask your child to look them up. So that then you're helping to broaden their vocabulary. So you write that down as a solution to that problem. Maybe they find the description very boring and slow. So maybe then it's worthwhile considering some films that they like. Perhaps they like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. In the stories, there's a lot of description. So perhaps you could, choose a book that there's a film adaptation so that they can watch the film, see the action, see how the setting is, and then read parts of the book so that it doesn't seem so dull. Or try to look up reviews from other kids with regards to classics to see which stories have a quicker pace that they might want to then choose for themselves. So there's two things: choosing a classic that is also a film, asking them to watch the film or watch parts of it, and then do some reading relating to specific scenes, so that way then they're primed for it, they know what to expect, and it might just enliven it for them. And what you could do is you could ask them to look at some reviews of classics from other children their age and find one that they feel relates more to them, and so that way then they have a book that is not going to be tedious for them to read. And then another consideration is they might feel like, I've done work already, I don't really want to do any more, I don't really like reading, might even be tired. So reading is an active process, so why not have audiobooks? They can have an audiobook so they can listen and follow the story. That might be a solution. Now you don't want to tell them this because again, you're taking their ability to make a decision away from them. Nobody wants to be told what to do. So instead, write the solutions out and cut them up. Write out the issues and cut them up. And then ask your child to decide which solution goes with which problem. Once they've done that, they can then take action on that because they've already taken action, actually. That's the thing. Can you see that? They've taken action by deciding what solution goes with what problem. And it gives them a greater sense of ownership, accomplishment, and they actually then are in the driving seat and so are more inclined then to take actions because they've already decided what to do. Now then, once you've done that, you want to you want to then create a plan with your child where you have decided together a time when they are going to study. So that's the allocated study time. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that there are consequences. And by consequences, I don't mean punishment. You want effective consequences so that they can see the impact of their decisions. Many parents feel guilty for this because they feel like it's harsh, that it's upsetting their child. However, what you're doing is you're teaching them the value of making decisions. Whether we think a decision is good, bad, is irrelevant. Those are labels that we put to it. But there are always consequences to our decisions. And some of the decisions, the consequences to them are in alignment with what we wanted, the outcome that we want, and sometimes it's not. So actually you're teaching them a valuable skill. So what you might want to do here is, if your child is refusing to do their work in the agreed study time, then you might want to say, well, okay, if you don't do that, there's going to be a consequence. It's your decision. So you can decide not to do the studying now at the agreed time, but it means that as a consequence, you will not be able to have your electronics later on, or you might not be able to have your free time later on, or you have to go to bed early. And tomorrow you will have the opportunity to have that free time or electronic time, or extend bedtime if you decide to do your work at the agreed time. That way then you're not punishing them, you're not prolonging it, but there's a clear consequence for their behaviour. By the same token, you want to reward positive decisions. And by that I don't mean rewarding the behavior, nor bribing them. So if you do this, you'll get this. No, that's not the case. But if you see them studying at the agreed time, if you see them, putting in effort and the attitude is generally good, and they're being consistent with that, then offer them a reward. And it doesn't have to be, financial. It doesn't have to be, sweet treats or anything like that. In fact, you probably want to steer clear from that, in the sense that you don't want them to associate reward with sweet things, but that's for another video. But what you want to do is be able to reward them with something that perhaps means something to them. So for example, if you see that they're studying well at the agreed time and they're making good decisions, then you could say, well, you've done fantastically well. I can see the hard work, the effort. So at the weekend, you can stay up 30 minutes later, or you can have 30 minutes more electronics time, or something like that. And that way then they are seeing that there's equally positive consequences for their decisions. So you're reinforcing that process for them. You're reinforcing that value. So to conclude, yes, actions are important, but actions of the mind are imperative for any other actions to take place. Do not force your child to study, but encourage them to make great decisions by, one, getting them to come up with solutions to some of the issues they may have, and two, giving them clear consequences. And as I say, I'm going to leave you with this. So, good decision making is about the first step, but without deciding to do it, there will be no commitment and no further actions. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Do not forget to subscribe, share, and I'd love to see what your thoughts are. So please, feel free to comment and share your insights. Bye for now.